Hi, everyone. So I think that there was a time in your life where you thought you could do anything. And for me, that time occurred when I was riding a bike by myself to the park. And I can change this slide myself. When I could ride a bike to the park by myself. And I felt powerful. My parents didn't know exactly where I was. I was careful because I was a little scared. But I realized that I was in control of where I was, what I was doing, and how long I was going to be gone. And that was a very liberating feeling. And I think for many of you, you had some similar experiences. And that might have been the first time you rode public transit. For me, I got another little thrill the first time I ordered a pizza and called someone on the phone and had them make it and drive it over to deliver it to me. I had that same thrill. The first time I got an app to drive me from place A to place B was that same feeling of power. Maybe it was playing a musical instrument. Maybe it was running a computer program. And in all of these moments, you were using a tool that multiplied your potential, that gave you the ability to control the world around you, maybe gave you more visibility. And ultimately, I think it helped you feel better about yourself. And I'm a parent. One of the things that I realized about our day and age is that it's getting harder and harder for my kids to do some of the same things that I did. And not only that, in the valley of what's supposed to be unchecked optimism, we measure our kids in so few ways. The number of KPIs that they are asked to measure themselves against just doesn't match up against what we believe is possible. And so a few years ago, I started an experiment. I wanted to give 8-year-olds force multiplying tools and see what happened. And so I wanted to give the equivalent of an Iron Man suit to an 8-year-old and see if we could have them control it. And I started something called Kid Independence Day, or KID for short. And KID starts with an invitation. A kid will receive a binder like this. It's really a briefing note for a mission. And they're also going to receive this set of credentials. This isn't just a name tag, but this is sort of in the spirit of KID. I went and copied the most official badge I could find, which was a badge to get into the most secure area of SFO. So I think it looks a lot more legit than an Affirm badge. And the statement this makes is, this isn't a name tag. This is a key to unlock the door to something amazing. In your binder is a series of instructions for a mission that you will undertake with 3 of your friends, where you're going to do this essentially entirely by yourself. Now, it's going to start with a visit to my house, where we begin preparations for the mission. And one of the first things we do is teach you how to use a map and a compass. A map is just a piece of paper with lines on it, but with the correct guidance and with the understanding of where to place yourself on the map, you can go miles, and you can direct yourself with precision, right? I used to actually give people timepieces as well. I don't do that anymore. And on the left-hand side, you'll see them completing another part of the mission, which is going to a supermarket to buy 8 items that they'll need for lunch. And so what they're doing now is they're reaching a quorum on the 8 items they want to buy. For those of you looking at the screen, number 2 is actually mayonnaise, just spelled a little bit more creatively. And so these are, that was a first grade mission, right? So, and here they are. And on the day of the mission, it's about a half day, we begin. And it's important for the kids to go everywhere essentially by themselves. So what you see on the left is a series of maps. And again, these are maps that they've sort of looked at before, they have some familiarity with, and it's going to help them guide them through urban settings. And you see 3 girls on the right. You'll notice there's no real adult with them. That's about as close as I will get to being around them. I try very hard to be a loose tail there for their safety, but they're supposed to figure things out on their own. And actually, the 3 of them are boldly walking the wrong way down Market Street right now. And it will take them about 10 minutes to realize that they've made this mistake. And all the while, this is the first thing they're doing, and they're initially assuming that I, as the adult, am going to clue them in. They're looking at my eyes. They're looking to see if I'm going to react. And at some point, they realize that, oh my goodness, I'm in this on my own. And at that point, they start to take more charge. So if walking around by yourself in a map is liberating, let's throw a machine into the mix, right? So if you know how to go from point A to point B, but then you know how to read a timetable, stand in the right place, get in the right car, follow a few rules, you can go anywhere in the Bay Area and actually anywhere in the world. And you can see on the right-hand side, these girls are using a BART ticket machine for the first time. The briefing notes have descriptions on how to do this, and you can see they're initially trying to use it like an iPad. They think that it's a touch screen. And the other thing is this specific machine, the dollar they put in, and they couldn't figure out what was going on, the dollar starts to spit out because the machine times out after a while. And the dollar is like flying around on the ground of the station. and they're sitting there, and they had to figure it out. And then finally, a police officer shows up and asks them where their parent is, because I'm standing 40 feet away. But by the time they bought their fourth ticket, they had figured it out by themselves. And you can see on the left what happens when a set of kids actually gets off the train. Remember what they've just done. They've bought a ticket, they've gotten on the train. Many of them have never ridden BART before, it's certainly not like this. They've realized they have to call the shots on when they get off the train. And so they're looking with extreme care at their map. And just look at the posture. Like, they know they're doing something they've never been able to do before. And at Kid Independence Day, we have to eat just like everybody else. But when we eat, we go to a restaurant where you have to order at the counter. And this is designed to give a kid experience ordering. You'll see one kid who's actually had to be the waiter of the group. He's had to go and poll everyone on what they want, and then goes up and makes that order. He's being accompanied by someone who is the treasurer, who's going to go and pay for the meal and actually account for the money. And you can see that these meal times are a time to rest, but they're also a time to recoup and plan for what's next. So they've got their maps and compasses out, trying to figure out the next milestone, right? And one of the most powerful things you can do today is actually exchange or trade goods, trade something for something else. Kids kind of get this when they play Minecraft, but they really get this when they go to a store. They're going to use money to buy those 8 items. And you can see the girl on the left who's actually climbing up the shelf because she can't quite reach to get that mayonnaise, as well as the kids at the checkout register here. Now, one of the things that I didn't realize when I started this camp is that it takes about 45 minutes to an hour for the kids to actually go and get these 8 items. And all the while, they're like pushing their carts around, leaving the cart in the middle of the aisle, like doing all these things that are kind of annoying. But because there's really nothing that bad that can happen to them in the setting, like the adult can take a very loose tail, right? As long as they don't leave that shopping store, they can figure it out by themselves. So it's extremely liberating. And every single Kid Independence Day basically ends like this. The kids are eating a meal they prepared by themselves, that they purchased by themselves, in a store they got to by themselves, on a public transit ride where they figured things out by themselves. And to the greatest extent possible, I've tried to stay away from them and interfere with what's going on. And in fact, I try to stay this far away, and these are magical moments. What you don't see in this picture is right behind me is this playground where all sorts of kids their age are playing and screaming, having a great time. Most of these kids would usually want to be there. They're having too much fun now playing adult. They're sitting and making sandwiches and eating them by themselves. And there's a feeling of total liberation. And I think that that's exactly what I felt when I went to the park by myself on my bike. And so I started this camp with this idea of, could we give force multiplying tools? Could I give an 8-year-old Iron Man suit? But as we get older, our tools just get more interesting. And as I got older and became a teenager, I got a FedEx number. And that number allowed me to transact and do business with companies who had no idea they were dealing with a 15-year-old. When I had a website, no one knew that they were dealing with just one person and not a company, right? The first time I moved money using an API, I think I felt that feeling. And fintech, and the reason why I think many of you are here, and the reason why I'm here, one of the most powerful things we can do with zeros and ones is move money around. And so we have force multiplying tools. At HVF, our job is to start companies. And we start these companies with people who have no business working in the areas that we think we can start companies in. Affirm's first product person didn't have any lending experience. Divvy Holmes' current head of growth knew nothing about real estate when she joined HVF. And so it's not just a curiosity of mine, it's an obsession of mine to collect and use force multiplying tools. So I want to share some of the things that we do, and I would encourage all of us to try using some of the backdrop of KID. So one of the things you can do in this modern world is get directly to source material. So when I take older kids, here's an example. The left-hand side is a page that I essentially copied out of some FAA manual of SFO Airport. I don't really understand most of the markings and numbers and stuff on it. And you can see Evan on the right has a set of binoculars, and he's got this guidebook, and we've got a radio that lets us listen to the tower talking to airplanes. And from that, we are basically able to reverse engineer some of the workings of SFO Airport. And so we got to that point just by making some good observations and just by going to source material. What does that mean for us today? Well, hey, we can read Reg E for cash transfers very easily. I can look at regulations for lending. I had a conversation with John the other day about how to look at Plaid, Quovo, and Yodlee for financial data points. I'm thinking about the conversation I had with Helen about how she got the Marqeta card started. All of these were things that we had access to because we could get to the source material. Now, sometimes the source material is not good enough, and we're wrong. And so in this case, I was very lucky. One of my neighbors is a pilot for United Airlines, and so I've sort of enlisted him. And so these girls had sort of figured out some about SFO, some about aircraft, and I said, wouldn't it be great to know what the planes were actually doing at those points where they radio and what's going on? Here's a pilot, let's ask him. And so he came by, and you can see that there's a large sort of cutout of an Airbus A320 cockpit, and he's actually telling us what he does at the various milestones for landing. And so the reason we could have these conversations with him, we'd sort of earned the right to have those conversations because we had gotten enough into his world to have that, to exchange that information. I like hanging around the legal group at Affirm because I learn a lot of things about fair lending, about what it means to service a loan properly, about a bunch of regulations that apply when we're trying to do things that are new. And I think those conversations are effective because we've taken the time to initially go to the source material, but we have to go to an expert. Now, if you want to change the world, you can't really do it unless you can relate to the people that you want to influence. And one of the things we do with some of our groups is go to a nursing home and run some events. We spend 10 minutes beforehand telling the kids what it means to talk to a senior. Here's how you need to raise your voice. Here's how you need to look them in the eye. Here's why you need to talk slowly. And we have some really good events that come from that. What you're seeing on the right-hand side is 2 phone booths where Boris and Brian at HVF are actually also talking to seniors. I took this photograph last week when we're trying to understand a little bit more about retirement financing. And we can't solve these problems in a whiteboard. We have to talk to the people we want to affect. One of the most powerful force multiplying things you can do is work in concert with other people. And that's easy to say, it's actually hard to do in practice. So one of the most distracting and honestly dangerous things that we do at KID is cross the street. You've got a bunch of kids who are all looking at their own map, who are trying to figure out where they're going to go. They're not really paying attention to what's around them. They might just sort of stumble into the street. They might separate and sort of go apart from each other. And, we're doing something we have no business doing, which is go around and have a bunch of first graders navigate, with nobody helping them. And if they start separating, it just gets very difficult. And so one of the things that we did was we set up a couple of processes and procedures. And one of them is before you're at a major point of inflection for what you're going to do next, we have to meet. And so what you can see there is before they're about to cross the street, they're actually indicating with their hands that they all intend to cross the street the same way. When they have a visual quorum, then they can go and actually move as a group and cross that street. And that's how it actually works. We do the same thing when we get together for a morning stand-up. Stand-ups are not just about giving status. They're about issuing all sorts of mini quorums where we can decide that we have consensus on where we want to go next. Because we start to lose our force multiplying capability when we separate. Now, when you're doing something you have no business doing, you have to recognize that you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And I think everything that we do right now is very similar to that. When we try to build something, we're coding, we're building products that did not exist before. And so we get these kids to be in the habit of checking back with each other maybe every 5 to 10 minutes, stopping, looking at the map, pulling out the compass, asking themselves, is this where I should be? Is this where we thought we were supposed to be? Because if we're not, we have to get ready to give up and try again. So we do these same things too when we meet and have status reports and have meetings. I think that adults are often too worried about being wrong to be really honest with themselves at these points. But we have these meetings not to make ourselves go faster. We have these meetings so that when something goes wrong, we can reduce the cost of that mistake. And so if you're going to try something new, be willing to admit that you're going to make mistakes, figure out how to compensate for it. Now, we end every KID Independence Day by having a parent pick us up. I sort of realized that we could double our effective range, but instead of going to somewhere and coming back, we could just have a parent pick us up and we could go twice as far. We can try twice as many new things. And then I learned something. I could just send an SMS message and my Chase fan will meet me anywhere else, right? So we don't have to end up where we thought we were going to be. And so if you have, and I guess in the Avengers they would call this dynamic extraction capability, if I have this, it means that I can take bigger risks because we can try new things and it doesn't really matter if we don't make it there. And so I would posit for all of us, when you're in a situation when you realize you have a safety net, if force multiplying yourself is important to you, you should be taking bigger risks. Everyone in this room probably knows where they're going to be sleeping tonight. Everyone in this room has probably collected enough professional resume that they can shoulder the burden of a mistake they might have made. Why not try that? And so I started my talk today by asking you if there was a time in your life where you thought you could do anything. And I think there's a part of all of us that actually wants to be in this picture. And so I don't know what that is for you. Maybe it's taking that solo trip to Spain. Maybe it's taking time tonight to learn that API with the understanding that you might not get it. Maybe it's starting a company. To what's next? Thank you.